I personally really reject those who attempt to undermine the whole human rights project by dismissing it as a form of Western cultural imperialism. I think that's just flat out wrong. And I think that people who believe in human rights, we have to have the courage of our convictions to stand up and say we respect and honor the wonderful tapestry of cultures and traditions that exist in our world. But the fundamental idea behind the Human Rights Project, which includes religious freedom, is the dignity and the agency, the personal agency of every single human being. And in that sense, no society can say, well, we think that the individual's rights have to be subservient to the rights of the culture or the prevailing religion or the state. When any society adopts that point of view, they're going down a path that will lead to the repression of basic human rights. It's called the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And interestingly, if you look at those who were involved in the drafting of this really seminal document of our time, they came from all cultures. You had Professor Chang, who was an incredibly distinguished Renaissance man of China. You had Dr. Malik from Lebanon. You had voices and input and study from every culture, from every tradition. And I do think that they did their work well. They distilled into that document what are the components that make for a life of dignity and fundamental respect for all human beings regardless of culture. Now, certainly the particulars can be nuanced differently based on cultural and historical traditions, but I think that that's an excuse that unfree societies and authoritarian regimes and authoritarian cultures sometimes use to squirm out of their obligations under international law. You know, in the United States, we have, maybe elsewhere in the world too, we have a sort of shorthand way that we describe how the media covers things, and we tend to say, if it bleeds, it leads. In other words, if it's a little bit shocking, if there's a little bit of violence or scandal or something involved, that's going to lead the news. And unfortunately, I think to some degree that dynamic is also at play in the coverage of religious freedom, so or religion in general, maybe not religious freedom per se. So what I think is missing are perhaps the more in-depth pieces that can give viewers a deeper understanding of what some of the complicated dynamics are that are at work. You know, it's easier to have a headline that says, you know, Pope says, who are we to judge about homosexuality? Or Pope says Donald Trump isn't a Christian, or, you know, those sorts of things that are quick. They capture the attention, or contrary-wise, things about terrorism and violence inspired by twisted understandings of religion also certainly grab people's attention. And I'm not saying that those things shouldn't be covered. Obviously they should be. But I bet you there would be a real audience out there for more thoughtful, in-depth pieces, good news stories and bad news stories about the way religion plays an incredibly important role in the lives of billions of people around the world.